accused of having looted. I think we are still owing DRC money from that time. So for me, I think diplomacy is much more superior. Yes, you can use some military, but I remember when the issue of Somalia, I was in Ethiopia at that time as ambassador. And the first thing that we discussed and agreed that countries, Somalia, will not go in because we wanted a political solution. We didn't want neighbors who have their own agendas and their own grudges to bring those grudges into the situation. So that is why, you know, Uganda was actually to accept to go in. Then there was Burundi. Eventually, I think even Ethiopia eventually went in. But the issue is,
what changed that?
It is basically because other African countries were not coming. So, because we had hoped some West African countries had actually pledged to come in, and didn't come in. Because it is a challenging situation. For many countries to go in, to deploy military, they need their parliaments to agree. They need their people to agree that we are going to deploy. Because, you know, it is costly in terms of different resources. So, therefore, my observation and my concern is that, you know, since we have had not such a good experience in DRC, I would agree that definitely it would be good for some African countries to come in, but not those that have bad experiences. If we could get those who do not border with the DRC, I think it would work out better. If our interest is actually to pacify the place and to bring about reconciliation.
Interesting perspective. Yes.
Can I be educated? Since 1960, the UN has been in Congo. What have we achieved with this approach of pacification? That approach of diplomatic approach, of diplomatic journey?
So, and can I also ask you a question?
Well, if you answer mine, I will answer yours definitely.
So you see what I told?
A chance. The conversation. Yeah.
No, I requested.
No.
Yes.
I need to be educated because for 60 years.
Let the ambassador respond. You will respond to her.
I believe that there is a chance if diplomacy can be given a chance.
It has never been given a chance, Madam Ambassador?
It hasn't.
Really?
Yes. It is interfered with. That chance is interfered with by neighbors.
Really?
Okay. Ambassador, did you have a question to ask General?
My question, what do they hope to achieve through the military?
First and foremost, I believe you know, Your Excellency, that the military is a tool of foreign policy. Are you aware? That the military is a tool of foreign policy.
It is a negative tool of foreign policy.
Then start with Washington, educate them about it.
So in other words, it is like this equipment which they use to break in houses. And
Yes.
Charles, let me come to you.
Exactly.
General, you and I have had a discussion before when we talked about the insurgents that happened there, about 1,200 people that we discussed with the rebels that were there. And also the last time General was here, we also talked about a bit of DRC between 98 and 2003. But now, if there's a state of siege, what is the real reason? It is mentioned as what you call a state of emergency is what they call the state of siege in the DRC. That's what the president declared there. The military has taken over the whole country. They are able to do, they're in charge of
and that is that's also incorrect.
So you're saying the President Felix is wrong with what he said?
He's lying.
The President of Congo is lying about his country.
He's lying, yes.
Okay, let me give you the facts. The administration has been taken over by the army.
And you know, when you say he's in control,
you know the East has been in battle for the longest time possible.
Now we are beginning to
Yes, it has been in battle for the longest, especially places like Ituri, Benin and Kivu, both north and
yes.
south. So that whole area has been an area that has given him headache. Hence the president declaring that they should have military base there. What is the real story why we have the military
Now, so
there?
we have two situations. The initial situation is the Chitona consensus, where Rwanda, Uganda attack Chitona, advance up to Inga Dam, then are stopped by Zimbabwe from taking over Kinshasa, and then they are attacked from the rear by Angola and later on Namibia. So I call it the Chitona consensus, which pushed them back, resulting into the San City conversations that resulted into the likes of Bemba and the others. Those who are interested can go and pick that piece of story. It's a long story. Now, Uganda and Rwanda that were allies, then in the Chitona offensive, when they went to overthrow Kabila, turned guns against each other. You remember the Chisangani 1, 2, and 3, if there is 3, during the time of Kazini. So the current situation we have is that Rwanda complains that Uganda supports, harbors and supports rebels against Rwanda to destabilize Rwanda. And that has led to the Angola processes, where the president of Angola is mediating between Mr. Museveni and Mr. Paul Kagame, and Tshisekedi has a role to play there. I think he's as observer or something. Now, but before that, the Kivus was under control of a force initially supported by, I think, Uganda and Rwanda. You remember Nkunda? They used to call him General Nkunda or something. That Nkunda.
Laurent Nkunda.
Yes. So the agreement then was that army of Nkunda and group becomes the army of Ituri, of Kivu, that is North and South Kivu. They become a political organization, of course with an army, but that the central government of Kabila would have command over that army, limited, now at what? Because it was not allowed to redeploy them outside the Kivus. Let me become clear that this force, under the March 23rd agreement, would be the army for Congo. The Nkunda force would be the army for Congo, but in the Kivus, right? But Kabila, who is the president of Congo and commander-in-chief, would not deploy them outside the Kivus. But then their political party they would have members of parliament in Kinshasa, they would have a regional government, and with their own army. So that's the agreement that was violated, that failed to work. Because I think Kabila attempted deploying them elsewhere, and there were also some killings. Then that's resulted into what they call the M23, the March 23rd. It refers to that agreement. So that means that initially, the central government of Kabila did not have an army this side of Kivus, because the Nkunda force, backed by Uganda and Rwanda, had been able to wipe out, literally, to push out the Kabila army. And if you remember very well, in the 23rd March uprising, they were even able to take Goma against the UN force. Now, that is the army that was defeated by another mandate of the UN. Because the initial mandate of the UN was to keep the peace. And I think that should have been, that included also the M23 agreement, if I'm not mistaken. But the second now was to destroy the M23, led by Tanzania. And those two armies are still there. So you have UN with 2 mandates, right? The mandate of keeping the peace and the mandate of destroying M23, enforcing the peace. Now, so therefore it's also not, therefore it is incorrect to say that you don't have foreign armies there. You already had foreign armies, but under the UN. Agreed? Now, but there are insurgents, there are rebels, and precisely, specifically, rebels against Uganda. Mr. Museveni's view is that we come in, we engage and destroy these rebels in DRC. It has consequences because you would have displacement of people. Because indeed there were some offensives. There were offensives against that rebel group, and it resulted into displacements. You have even been having refugees coming into Uganda. But whenever you have a dispute with your own people who have run to DRC, it is the DRC civilians to suffer. And that's why you see in the Angola processes, this is part of the issues to be resolved. Now, then there is another thought that no, we cannot destroy, we shouldn't allow you come in to destroy these rebel groups in this territory. But then how would UN have refugees who are armed? In other words, Ugandan rebels in the Congo, they are refugees. You give them the status of refugees, but they are armed. But it's not unique because Museveni did that precedent, set that precedent. Because you had Kagame, Mr. Kagame, Rwigema, a team as refugees in Uganda, but armed, weren't they? Yes, they were refugees, and some of them were even ministers, and at some stage even commanders. I mean, commanders, CMI, Kagame was in CMI, etc. Therefore, Mr. Museveni therefore wouldn't be justified to say you should disarm the refugees. Therefore, that problem needed a political solution, and they failed to solve that problem politically. So they engaged into a war, into operations against these rebels. UN, not the Tanzanian one, the other one led by the one that was supposed to observe the peace, was hit by the rebels, and I think they even lost a gunship, 1 or 2. So that was the first group. Then there was also another offensive, and the Tanzanian troops were hit. If you remember very well, some of the commanders were brought to, some of the soldiers who were wounded were brought to Nakasero Hospital.
As you conclude, Charles.
If you recall very well, and you said you wanted to understand it. Now, so where are we now? Where we are is that the Ugandan rebels, that time I gave you a reference to go and check how the Ugandan rebels were able to raid a prison and rescue their colleagues, 1,400 of them who were in prison. Certainly, of course, that's a lot of capability. Their numbers swear by that number, and it's also big capability to do that kind of operation. Now, they've gone on the offensive, the guerrillas. The Ugandan rebels are on the offensive in the Congo, in the Kivus, and have captured territory and are building a base to secure their rear against Mr. Museveni. Now that's the operating situation. So why I told you that Skedi is not in control is that he's been beaten hands down by the Ugandan rebels. Now they have territory and he can't handle them. That's the reason why he has asked Mr. Museveni, can you come? If indeed it is true that it is him who has asked, because that's how NRA talks, that's how Mr. Museveni talks. You know, they asked me to come in, even when he's the one who has begged, please help open for me, give me a mandate to come and sort them out in your country before they attack me here, because here he can only handle borders. Even borders is failing. So that's the situation. Tshisekedi is not in control of the situation. It's running out of hand. That's why he has declared the martial law. He has declared the martial law and overthrown civil authorities. But remember, he even failed to organize elections there. If you remember very well, that the Kivus, there were no elections. This second run-up, third run-up was called who? I forget the name. That was his base. and he was not voted there. So the situation is bad, and I don't think that the Ugandan rebels are picking territory there to stay there. They must be picking territory to build a base and expand their base into Uganda. Therefore, the entry of Mr. Museveni is not to pacify Congo. It's a desperate attempt to block them from entering.
General, some of the things that Charles has said really concern us as ordinary Ugandans.
Yes.
When you hear his statements, how would you be able to rebut that? But also, where UN has failed, where armies have failed in there, what makes you think the UPDF will be successful?
Thank you. To begin with, I need to correct Rumushan. Dealing with an enemy who is preparing a rear base is not a desperate attempt. It's a strategic decision.
Okay.
It's not desperate. It's a strategic. And by the way, the best defense is offense. That's the training I know. Now, if you know the enemy is building capacity, you don't wait for him. You even can do a preemptive strike. Now, however, with the case of DRC, it's no longer a DRC matter alone. It's public knowledge DRC has applied to join the East African community. Mm-hmm. In whose interest? You think it's Kinshasa or Badolite? It's Eastern Congo. And who is bordering Eastern Congo? It's South Sudan, it's Uganda, it's Rwanda, it's Burundi. And these are members of the EAC. It's within their interest that Eastern Congo is stabilized. Now, too, and I'm surprised the ambassador said the defense was negative too, foreign policy. I need to go back to my studies of strategic studies to discover that. But the last I was in university studying strategic studies, I was educated that defense policy is a tool of foreign policy because diplomats have engaged. Mm-hmm. The only place, by the way, a UN Secretary General died is Congo. Dagama scheduled, 1960. So we are not dealing with a new situation. Somebody said, if you look at the map of Africa, it's like a revolver, and the trigger is DRC. That was not me, it was even a political scientist, not a soldier. So, excuse me, the situation that has been going on in Congo for decades, if left unattended to, and I'm surprised when I talk about refugees the other day, we began receiving refugees from Congo in the 90s. They are not recent. In the 90s. Then we had this enormous exodus when there were these upheavals between Laurent Nkunda's group, what was the force? Before Kabila. Before M23. Massive refugees that flew across the border. 3. What is Pan-Africanism? How do you talk about loving other Africans and you fold your hands when they are busy suffering with instability? Recently, Congo had elections that brought His Excellency Tshisekedi. But even those elections, you have just observed correctly, is the whole of Eastern Congo almost didn't have elections. People didn't vote. Is that to you a normal diplomatic situation?
No, I was not saying it's normal, but I was only trying to explain the operating situation.
Thank you very much.
The operating situation is that Eastern Congo is now getting occupied by Ugandan guerrillas. That's what concerns me.
Absolutely.
Yes, if it was being occupied by rebels against Salva Kiir, that would be a different matter. Yes. It is rebels against Mr. Museveni who has even failed to manage the political question in the interior.
That's your own view. So to answer a question, therefore, why do we think we shall manage where others have failed? I think we have a record. I'm glad Ambassador Sempala referred to the initiatives on Somalia. Somalia initiatives did not start yesterday. They started way back in 1992. Diplomatic efforts, I'm sure you know, they failed. They moved on to bilateral. Egypt tried as an individual country. It failed. Ethiopia tried until the Ethiopians deployed against the Islamic State.
Islamic courts.
The Islamic Courts Union, which had taken over Mogadishu. And
which had stabilized Mogadishu.
I said taken over, whether stabilized, that's another matter. And so, when the African Union said, it's high time we deploy the force, on the precinct of the conference in Abuja, 2006, 5 countries accepted to deploy. Sudan? No, not Sudan. It was Nigeria, Uganda, Malawi, Tanzania, and Burundi. Nigeria, on learning there are no dollars being paid, pulled out. It's factual. They have not deployed the police force later after UN allowances are being paid. Malawi said they were debating about it, eventually they never turned up. Uganda deployed on the 9th of March 2007. Burundi, and this was stated by government, because of Uganda's effort in stabilizing Burundi, they had a duty to participate in stabilizing another country. That's why they joined later.
General,
allow me to complete this one, because you need to study these dynamics. Ambassador has talked about now the neighbors coming in. And I asked her, educate us, how did this happen? To her, she said, because others didn't come. No.
It is. That is the reason they gave us the African Union.
Now I can tell you, there were other forces that encouraged the 2 neighbors to enter Somalia.
Against Mr. Museveni?
Yes.
Yes.
But let me ask General.
You are going for that pot. And those who know how you can be bad man that came in.
No.
General, let me ask, leaving Charles's point there.
No, it is very serious. It's that Mr. Museveni's intervention in Somalia far exceeded stabilizing Somalia. He had other interests.
That's in your mind. But as far as we
that's why they encouraged the other neighbors to come in and counter Museveni.
Gentlemen, let's rein in here a bit.
Yes.
General, there are protests in Benin. The playing field is different. The rebels there seem more sophisticated than when you were there in 2003.
Yes.
The UN is also there. You are going to find an army that does not have rules to rein in. They are searching people's houses. They are arresting people they're running the administration. They're running the courts. How are you going to have checks and balances there, especially to Ugandans who are the taxpayers to you?
First and foremost, the rules of engagement must be very clear. First, the mandate. What's the mandate? Is the mandate doing internal security in Congo, which the army of Congo is doing, FRDC, or the mandate is to do with the foreign forces on Congolese soil? Number 1. 2, the rules of engagement therefore will be drawn according to the mandate.
What is the mandate for Ugandan's military bases?
The mandate has to be given at state-to-state level. Because mind you, this is bilateral. So the DRC will state what you are coming to do. All right? So going beyond the wishes of the DRC government will be overstepping our mandate.
So the mandate is what is going to keep you in the checks and balances?
Of course, once you have a mandate between the 2 states, which is done, by the way, by the diplomats, not us.
But you have already entered, so you have the mandate.
Where?
You have already entered. Since you have already entered, then you should be having the mandate.
You have entered where?
Congo.
Where?
You see, are you saying you're not there?
Well, I don't know.
Okay. Now I'm informing you are there. Without even a
to the best of my
approval.
knowledge, Timothy, to answer your question, the 2 states agree, and then rules of engagement are given to the operating forces at operation level.
We shall not have what happened between Rwanda and Uganda there.
Can I ask you a question? What stopped that encounter in 2003?
I am the moderator, you're the one answering the question.
No, because in other words, what stopped that encounter in 2003 is possible to stop it even now. Rwanda is 1,000 kilometers southeast of Ituri. 1,000. What business do they have in Ituri?
You know that recently when rebels attacked Rwanda, they claimed Ugandan rebels had attacked them. Hence, the tension there.
They claim Ugandan back to rebels.
Uganda
back to rebels.
Not Uganda.
So won't that cause the tension still between the two countries?
No, but if the rebels are in Kivu, we have deployed in Ituri, what business do you have with them?
Ambassador, let me come to you. About 1.6 million people are leaving Congo.
Yeah, but before you leave that, I think there is something you need to emphasize. You are bringing it up, but it's not well emphasized. How bad is this situation that martial law is declared, that civil authorities are overthrown? You get? Because you see, we also have a threat here. Mr. Museveni has already threatened he will overthrow parliament. You know what Tshisekedi is doing in Kivus, Mr. Museveni has already threatened he will do it here. So how bad is the situation in the Kivus that it has culminated into the overthrow of civil authorities? Yes, it must be too bad. And I think that's what should interest us. Because the way Mr. Koleji is talking about it is like it's a light matter. It's like a light matter. You are going in, have a cup of tea, and then withdraw. No, it's war. We are at war. So in other words, we are at war, but maybe the war is going to be active initially. If it's not active in the interior, it's going to be active in the exterior. But we are at war. And the country needs to be told thus.
General, is this fact?
Timothy.
Because it's concerning when he puts it out that way.
Can I clarify this?
Yes.
When a military is deployed in a war zone, it has not gone for a wedding party.
No, it's answered then.
When we are landing at Mogadishu airport under fire, are we going for a wedding party? No.
So this is not a wedding party?
It's not.
It is not a tea party?
The moment you swear to protect the country called Uganda, you know you will face war. And that's why when you are under fire, you are telling the men you are commanding Songambele, and you are moving with them as a commander. We are going for war. Because that's why we exist anyway. The result death of the military is not for parade you saw in Kololo.
My last question to you.
Yes.
General, for a force to go out, Parliament has to approve.
Yes.
This force seems to have gone out with only a request from the president of DRC. Why?
That's beyond my paycheck.
General, you've just been a member of Parliament.
Yes, but your question about the state seeking permission of Parliament to deploy is beyond me to answer.
You were in charge of oversight.
Legally, it's a fact. All right? And as far as I know, I'm not aware whether I have deployed, so I can't answer it.
Let me come to you, Ambassador, and to have a conversation with you. About 1.6 million people, leave DRC, especially as refugees, to come to Uganda. How do we find a humanitarian balance, especially looking at the influx of refugees coming to this country and the support coming from the country? Isn't there a diplomatic way to be able to handle this, especially people losing their lives here?
Obviously, when people are in a difficult situation they are in, they will try to run away, to look for refuge. And in a way, it is right for us to give them refuge. But for me, I think it is important to really think, if he was talking about thinking or acting strategically. I think the strategy that we should be, applying is that of peacemaking, not preparing for war. Because we've been in wars, vicious circle of wars, which are not relating. So he said that, DRC, it has applied for
the East African community. Yes.
The East African community. Now, what kind of East African community are we going to have when neighbors are fighting neighbors? When internally, because you see, the external or foreign policy is actually a reflection of internal policy. Where you have good internal policy, where people are harmonized, where you have democracy, respect for the rights of your citizens, it will be reflected in foreign policy as well. So unfortunately, what we are seeing is a failure to actually manage politics. Instead, we have militarized our politics, we have monetized our politics. Our politics is in a mess, in a vicious cycle of violence, which violence we had committed ourselves to get rid of. You know, when we promised a fundamental change, that change was not going to be a vicious cycle of violence. It was going to be good governance. It was going to be respect for human rights, getting rid of corruption, and all these things are possible because things like respect for human rights, you can decree them actually. You can decree that your people are not going to be tortured. You can decree that you will allow people that, because in democracy or in politics, you will always have opponents. You will have people who do not agree with you. So if they disagree with you, convince them. If you can't convince them, if you fail eventually, you can try again.
Timothy.
That is what happens in other countries.
I'm afraid
yes.
the ambassador is mixing up issues.
No, I'm not mixing up issues because
can I educate you?
No, General.
General, let her finish and come back to you to rebut.
Yes, General, we are in a military kind of situation because democracy has failed. Because diplomacy, therefore, has failed, is not preferred, you know. And therefore, we are, you know, we are flexing, you know, we are investing more in violence, in the military, instead of investing in peace building. That is the problem.
Yes, and I think to amplify what you're saying is you now know the insurgents are in Congo. Seek them up and dialogue.
Yeah.
Question is,
why don't you have dialogue with these guerrillas as an option?
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Is ADF an offshoot of politics in this country?
Is it ADF?
Yes.
No, I don't think.
Is the ADF an offshoot of the politics in this country?
Let me tell you.
The answer is yes or no, then you can proceed.
No, let me, you have to explain. Because wherever there are grievances and they are not managed properly, responsibly, then you can have this kind of course I do not, you know, I do not support radicalism or anything like that. But, you know, not everybody is a radical. General, and not everybody is a radical.
We are dealing with the Congo question. If your internal politics, I will not go into them. You were an ambassador for this country at the time ADF was declared a terrorist organization. True or false?
No, ADF, yes, it was declared.
And that's the force we are dealing with in Congo today.
But I'm not sure that's the force you are dealing with.
We are not dealing with political dissidents.
You see,
we are not. If you have a different organization there, please inform the viewers. As far as I know, we are dealing with ADF.
ADF, you defeated it. You defeated ADF.
And then it had the capacity to rebuild.
Where were you?
Ask the UN who beat them the other day. Ask the Tanzanians who killed their 14 soldiers. Please don't misinform the viewers. So this is now the lies you have been talking about here. To suit political interests.
No, you see,
there are no political interests here.
You know, the good thing is you are very good at marathon with the lie, but the truth will move slowly, will creep and will come.
No, I know, and I cannot even. I don't.
Because you see, initially you are saying
politics.
But internal politics has a bearing on external politics.
He has been coming in.
Okay.
Yes, he has been coming in.
But
Mr. Museveni accuses UN of harboring Ugandan rebels.
True.
So why would UN harbor a terrorist, a force they have declared a terrorist organization? That is the lie, and it is his lie. UN must therefore have assessed that this organization is not a DF.
Oh.
And when you are in Congo, you don't say that you are not being monitored in Congo because you run propaganda and you are monitored in Congo. In Congo, you say something else. You tell them something else. You will tell us the truth.
Can I ask you the question?
Ask the question.
If therefore the UN sees this organization not as a terrorist organization, it's true they are harboring rebels.
Yeah, but you have accused them.
Now,
yes.
Is it true they are harboring rebels?
Yes. They refuse to use some capabilities.
Does Uganda have a right to defend herself?
Absolutely, it does. That's not in contest.
I rest my case.
That's not in contest.
I rest my case.
My only contention is on how you give us the truth. Is that you deny us the truth.
I think the contention was whether we have not given diplomacy a chance.
Yeah, that was her view. That was her view, and I support it.
And I am asserting that diplomacy has failed.
It has not failed.
No, but you are in discussions with Angola. You are in discussions with Angola and discussions with Rwanda over and it is scheduled.
So we have not given the
so she's right to say therefore
it has not failed. Therefore it has not failed.
True.
Let's training. Charles, let's conclude the point and then come back to Ambassador. Yes.
Yes, you see, the Tanzania is an occupation force.
Yes.
In the Kivus. Yes, it is. It's
but
there.
With a mandate.
No, yes, it's an occupation force in Kivus.
With a mandate.
What's your interest?
No. My interest is that put.
You had it. You are on this show.
No.
Did I bring you here? Did I drive you? You keep driving instead of. Why speak for you? Am I in operation where is creation? You see, Tanzania is there as a force, and Tanzania went in to fight negative forces.
Right.
And it destroyed M23 as a negative force. Right? Tanzania has not engaged this rebel force. Actually, it has an understanding with this rebel force. You know, they had a skirmish and they appear to have lived together. That's why Mr. Museveni is saying, I want to come in. But there is already a UN. You'd otherwise be saying, UN, why don't you resolve this? Why don't you attack this rebel force the way you attacked M23? Because if you destroyed M23, which was actually even Congolese, Tanzania intervened in Congo to destroy a rebel army that was Congolese. Then, if you're talking about East Africa, Tanzania then would be justified to intervene and destroy this rebel force. No, it's because, and I think Chikwete talked about it, former president. He said, no, people, you talk. You remember? When he said Mr. Kagame and Mr. Museveni should talk to their rebels. We don't need to resolve this through war. And I agree with her when she says, give a conversation a chance. Because the way you are being beaten there, you'll also be beaten in the interior. You know, they beat you, you now go on border riders, you beat them, you are with your drones abducting civilians. Haven't you done it? Hasn't your military beaten civilians?
You are mixing issues.
But are they correct or not correct?
Are they part of this show today?
No, they have a bearing. They have a connection
on this matter.
No, I am with the moderator.
No, okay. I have a right to also express my view.
Yes, express it, and it's rejected. You see, I determine how I serve the buffet. It's a buffet, and all the meals in the buffet are marked. So Kureje is not going to compel me to eat chicken only. No, I can also eat beans. So why is he saying I'm mixing issues? Me, I want to eat katoko. But it's a buffet, and I will remix it. And yes. The general consensus is that for the stability of the region, we should have dialogue.
Exactly.
Yes, the way you have been encouraging Salva Kiir to dialogue with Riek Machar, move in and negotiate with these insurgents. By the way, even if they were ADF, we have had some of them brought here under amnesty, and you killed them here. Were you able to secure them? Those who surrendered under amnesty, did you secure them? They were shot dead here on the streets of Kampala. So you need to change your mindset. Actually, the deployment you have is not to change my mindset. No, it's to change your own mindset.
General, let me come to you. How do you see this? I have 3 minutes, and I'm going to give each of you a minute. How do you see this being concluded, especially that the military, and especially your experience with the military, how do you see this ending with these insurgents and rebels in Congo? In a minute.
Timothy, peace building involves a number of efforts. Effort 1 is talking. Effort 2, first is the approachment. You start, you engage before you even talk. And this government is known to be always interested in talking first. Right from the days of Angelo Kerry in 1988. That's the first rebel group we talked to. That's how UPDA ended. Then we were accused of not talking to Kwani. We went up to Garamba. I was in the LRA camp, unarmed. They even threatened to kill us on the ground. We did not stop the negotiations. But the country knows where they ended. ADF is a terrorist organization. And that one I would be lying to you that we're going to talk to them. True, there are those who came out with amnesty. True, a few have been killed on our street here. By the ADF, not by government. So by Mr. Umushana saying they were killed here, it's as if we brought them to kill them.
Did you say
as you conclude, General?
So as I conclude, given the 60 years of instability in Congo, 2, given that indeed an intervention force came with the mandate of the UN to destroy a Congolese rebel group, M23, but has left the Rwandese rebels, the Congolese, those Burundi rebels against Burundi government, and ADF, cannot be analyzed only using Ugandan lenses. There is a bigger problem in the Great Lakes region. We know there is a conflict system called the Great Lakes conflict system. It must be addressed from all angles. In the meantime, you cannot allow negative forces to continue building capacity. Because by the time you want to deal with them, they may be a monster too big to deal with.
Okay, I'm going to take a break and I'll come back to High Excellency and Charles to be able to give their concluding remarks on this issue, especially about DRC and how we can be able to handle it moving forward. But you can be part of the show with the numbers below your screen. We're on Facebook Live, and you can get to our YouTube channel to let us know what you think, especially about us taking a military base to the Congo. We haven't touched the infrastructure. That is a road being constructed there, and 20% of that is taxpayers' money. You and I are going to contribute to it. But when we come back, we'll be looking at what are the interests of Russia in this country, and how are we going to navigate the waters between Uganda and Rwanda. And the last question there, aren't we taking our new turf of battle between Uganda and Rwanda to Congo? That and more after this break.
The truth, the lies, and politics. Informative, educative, and analytical. Getting to the real issues that affect an ordinary individual in areas of leadership, governance, social, and economy. The truth, the lies, and politics.
This is a message of hope from Spirit TV.
That's
how the Lord is going to manifest. If you want battles, He's going to If you want victory, He's going to overcome. If you want peace, He's going to give you peace. If you want life, He's going to give you life.